welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hi, this is Jessica from Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast, and it's been a minute or two since we've done a Syosset Stories podcast where we have joined somebody who is from Syosset, who is now doing notable things, and we've had a bunch of people on, and this came up really interestingly. I don't know, Gabe, if you know how this sort of came on our radar. So Sharon Long, who is our assistant director, was watching The Beast and Me on Netflix, as we all were at that
I've
time.
heard of it.
Yeah, you've heard of it, right? So
Mhm.
what struck her was that it took place in Oyster Bay Cove, which is, I know we have listeners all over the place. So Oyster Bay Cove is a very specific area, and unless you're really familiar with these parts, I should say. It's
Mhm.
kind of a random place to set something. So it made her sort of go, huh? And then she went to see if anybody who we would have known was involved. And of course, your name came up and she said, "Oh, I know him. We went to high school together."
Yeah,
So I would like to welcome you, Gabe Rotter, to Turn the Page.
thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's great to be
Thank you.
here.
Thank you for joining us. So first of all, being a Syosset alum, usually these interviews are a mix of things. We talk about a little bit about like what you're doing now, which I can't wait to talk about because I binge watched The Beast and Me, which
Oh, good. Thanks.
it's very difficult not to binge watch it. But if you also have twin 10-year-olds like I do,
Oh
who
boy.
like to, yeah, who like to walk in all the time and ask you what you're watching, it is difficult. So
Not great. Yeah.
yeah, not for kids. Um,
Sorry.
no, it was really good, and I made it work. But
Great.
yeah. So I guess what my first question for you is to tell us a little bit about yourself
hmm
and how you sort of ended up doing what you're doing now.
Sure. Well, as you said, I grew up in Syosset, Woodbury, Oyster Bay Cove area, moving sort of a few times from spot to spot, but I went to Syosset High School, and when I graduated, I moved out to Los Angeles to go to film school at USC and did that for the requisite 4 years. And then I literally started my first job in the business the day after I graduated college, which was on the X-Files as a first as a production assistant in the office where the producers worked. And I did that for a year or a season, I should say. And then I was promoted to writer's assistant. So that's where I sort of really, I think, started forming my chops, if you will. It was a super formative experience. I mean, it was a murderer's row of writers in that room at the time. Including Vince Gilligan, who created Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and Chris Carter, of course, who created the X-Files, and Frank Spotnitz, and you know all these guys who were just uh, terrific guys, super supportive and generous in helping me figure out how to write for TV. And I also fortunately or fortuitously, I should say, had access to every X-Files script that had ever been written. And at that point, there had already been 200 something episodes, I think. And I really kind of dove into those scripts and devoured them. And, maybe it sounds silly to some people, but I really feel like I learned how to write TV mostly by reading 200 plus scripts in a matter of a few months. It really helped me of course, I always wanted to be a writer, so I always had a sort of story sense, a kind of intuitive understanding of the shape of a story, but that really, really taught me how to write in the TV format. And so I did that for 2 seasons, and then the X-Files ended. And then I sort of my career trajectory is a little unusual in that I didn't I thought I would kind of slip right into another writer's assistant job. That didn't happen. I ended up going and working for Chris Carter, who created the X-Files, in various capacities over a span of 20 years, actually, after that. I started as his personal assistant, then I was director of development for his company, and then we ended up kind of developing a bunch of stuff and selling a bunch of stuff together over the years. And then in 2020, I sold my script, The Beast in Me, to Netflix. And gosh, it sounds like such a quick little story when I tell it that way, but it was a long, arduous journey to get to that point. I wrote 2 novels and while I was working for Chris that got published by Simon and Schuster. So that was a sort of side quest, until I got back to writing TV scripts.
Did you find it difficult transitioning from scripts to novels? Usually, when we talk to authors and or screenwriters, it's the opposite. They're like, "Oh no,
Yeah,
I started with novels, and then I had to sort of pivot in a completely different way." They are completely different.
they are. Yeah.
At least how I kind of perceive them. They have things that they both do, but they do them in different ways. So, how did that work for you?
I found it really freeing. I had spent by that point, I think I wrote my first book when I was in my early 20s. And so I had been probably working in the business for I'd call it 6 years or something, writing mediocre screenplays and sort of struggling to figure out what I wanted, what kind of writer I wanted to be, and what I wanted to sort of put into the world. And I got really exhausted by the process, by writing scripts that seemed so clear in my mind, and then you know getting them on paper. I just wasn't satisfied with the quality of what I was doing. So I thought, I have this wacky idea for a book. Maybe it'll be nice to sort of take the shackles off, not worry about the format so much because obviously writing, scripts is a pretty rigorous format. And of course, the format's different from television to film. And I hadn't really felt that I'd been truly successful on either front, television or feature. So I kind of felt freed by writing a novel, and I just came home from work every day and banged away on my computer, kind of, just letting it flow, however it felt like, you know, however it felt most natural. And so for me, it was a great experience. Of course, it takes much, much longer to write a novel, at least for me, than it does a screenplay. And, as I'm sure you well know, that's a tough business to make a living at. So, I sort of quickly realized I think I should maybe turn my attention back to the TV thing, which is what I ultimately did.
When I mean, so that's a pretty long stretch between selling it and the whole thing coming to fruition.
Yes.
I know I probably said this um, already. It was just so fabulous. I could not stop watching it.
Good.
It
Thanks so
was
much.
just absolutely addictive. Where did the story come from for you? And did you get to be involved at all in the production? Like the casting was
Oh
chef's
yeah,
kiss.
I was involved with everything from the start. I mean, let's see, where did I come up with the story? I've told this story before, but it started with an article that I read, I believe in the New Yorker in 2016, believe it or not. It was during the election, the presidential election, and Donald Trump was running for the first time, and I read an article about this guy, this writer named Tony Schwartz, uh, who ghost wrote Donald Trump's Art of the Deal. And
I read the same
yeah,
article.
it's really fascinating because, he was this sort of young, struggling writer when he agreed to write that book. And he was given, unfettered access to Donald Trump, and he could follow him around and sit in on his meetings and listen to his phone calls and he quickly realized this man was, not kind of not like us, to quote a line from my show. But he made this sort of Faustian bargain to write this book that would mythologize Trump and really sort of glorify him in a way that would, first of all, people don't necessarily realize that that book, The Art of the Deal, is really what sort of put Donald Trump on the map in a serious way as a respected businessman. He was sort of, you know, kind of a page six punchline when we grew up, in New York. And so that book really legitimized him. And so Tony Schwartz, once Trump ran for president all those years later, had horrible, horrible guilt about it. And he felt that he had been, party to creating this I'll use the term monster again because he was horrified at what he'd done. He went on sort of an apology tour, and he gave back all of the money that he made supposedly over the years from the Art of the Deal, and which was quite a bit of money. And anyway, I thought that writer subject dynamic was an interesting way into a TV series. And so actually the first version I wrote, um, the character who ultimately became Nile Jarvis was a mobster, a sort of dyed in the wool mafia don, who moves in next door to Aggie and wants to be mythologized by her. And he's a guy who wanted to be remembered as one of the all-time great gangsters. He kind of he had mafia movie posters hanging on his walls, and he really kind of saw himself in that pantheon of badass gangsters. And so that was the original version that I wrote in 2016. And as you astutely pointed out, it was a long, long, long journey to get it actually to the screen, which I'm happy to tell you about.
Yeah, please do. And I have to say, like, that is fascinating because I was not expecting that to be the sort of touch point
Yeah.
of this. Uh I mean, Matthew Race is like terrifying. He's really good at that. I've heard he's a very nice person, but he
Oh
is
my God.
so good at
Yeah.
playing these terrifyingly calm characters. Um, and Claire Danes, I mean, we're not too far apart in high school. I was only a year younger than you, so we
Mhm.
were around the same time when she first kind of came on the scene in My So-Called
So-called
Life.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like, I mean, seeing her in anything is sort of like that very specific point in Gen X, Xennial, whatever you want to call it.
Totally.
Yeah, pop culture
Yeah, yeah.
nexus. So, I mean, really, like she was so good and he was so good, but the story itself, it was, like it really it really took your hand and wove you through a whole bunch of a whole bunch of emotions. Even when you kind of saw where it was going, you still felt like you were on a roller coaster, and it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about bringing it to that point, please do.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying all that. It's very generous. Yeah, Claire is a virtuoso. I mean, the first time, it's funny, I worked with her for 5 years before she got attached to it in 2020. So we worked on it together for a long time before we actually started making it. And so I hadn't actually heard her read the lines in my script until a few days before we started shooting, 5 years later. And I just started to cry. I just suddenly was, and I don't even know if she saw that I was like wiping my eyes, but like I hadn't expected it. And it was kind of just a miracle to see the words actually read by her finally. And Matthew is, as you said, the greatest dude. Like he's just such a nice person, such a fun person, so funny and gregarious and generous and like true man of the people. And then he flips this switch and he's just, holy shit. Am I allowed to curse on here? I'm sorry.
So I have to say, just because this also has to do with Syosset stories, the first
Yeah,
person to drop the S bomb was Jude Apatow, and I went to
great.
my director, and I'm like, Jude Apatow dropped the S bomb. Are we erasing it? And she's like, no, we're not censoring Judd Apatow. So,
All right, great. I just met
so
him for the first time, by the way.
he's really, really nice. He's the
So
nicest guy.
cool.
We've had him on twice.
I thought he was gonna like, yeah, 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 blow me off. I went up to him and I said, "Hey, I'm a huge fan." It was actually at the Golden Globes after party. Sorry, that sounds really gross and Hollywood name droppy, but I was delighted to meet him. So I went up to him and I said, "Hey, I created The Beast in Me. We're both Syosset high school alumni. We had the same teacher, Jack DeMacy, and
Jack DeMacy alumni here too.
nice. I love
Yes.
it." Anyway, he said, "Oh, let's take a selfie. I'll send it to him." I was like, "What? Judd Apatow's taking a selfie with me? This is so cool." Anyway, so yeah, so I wrote it in 2016. I kind of went around town with that mafia version that I mentioned, and it didn't really get too much. I got a lot of meetings off of it. I got a lot of meetings off of it. People really liked the script, but no takers really until um, strangely Conan O'Brien's company, um, a guy there named Larry Sullivan, loved it and gave it to his boss, David Kissinger, who was running Conan's company at the time, and Kissinger loved it. And so I went in and met with, and then Conan loved it. So I went in and met with all of them, and they just got it. It was such a relief after all these sort of bullshit Hollywood meetings where I'm, dancing for my dinner and just not getting the reaction that I thought I would get. It was a big relief to go into a room with these really, really smart people and just hear them totally embrace it and get it and enthusiastically you know, push pitch themselves to be involved. And so, that was an obvious yes to me. So, in that first meeting, David Kissinger said, I went to college with Jodie Foster. Would you mind if, and we're still in touch, would you mind if I sent her the script?" And I said, "I would not mind if you sent the script to Jodie Foster." So David sent the script to Jodie, who was into it and wanted to meet and chat. So we met with Jodie and David and Conan and Larry, and it was like suddenly I really felt like the dumbest guy in the room because they're all just so smart. Um, anyway, Jodie loved the script, but had some notes and some big ideas on it. Um, and it was kind of like, she left the meeting and I stayed and spoke with Conan and David and Larry and they said, "Look, those are big notes. And if you don't want to take them, that's totally fine with us. We support you. We love this script the way it is. we can, soldier on. But, if you don't take them, Jodie probably won't attach herself to this project. And at that time, she was just looking to direct. She wasn't looking to act in anything. So she wanted to direct the pilot. So, of course, I wanted Jodie Foster attached to the project. So I took the notes, and so that's the version we sold to Netflix in 2020. Claire Danes got attached to that version. Jodie had sort of this unrequited relationship with her. They had like tried to work together several times. They I think almost worked together. And then anyway, Jodie sent Claire the script. Claire reacted positively, thank God. And sort of off and running we went, pitching it around town. And Netflix loved it and bought it at the end of 2020. And then we had a writer's room in 2021 for that original version that Jodie helped mold. We had a 20-week writer's room on that version with a great, brilliant, wonderful group of writers. And then at the end of that 20 weeks, I got a call from my agent. Netflix was supposed to decide at that point whether they were going to greenlight it to production. And my agent said, okay, you're either going to love this or hate this. And I was like, oh, I'm definitely going to hate this. What is it? They're not wild about the scripts that are coming in, and they think it's because they like the original version better than the one that that Jodie sent you off and running on. And so it was a relief to me in many ways because the version we were doing was not the version that I set out to write. I liked it and I stood behind it, but I was excited to get back to sort of the original version, which Netflix, by the way, hadn't even read. They'd only heard about in our pitch meeting. So they read it and they liked it, but they felt that the mafia stuff felt familiar, and they weren't so interested in doing a mob show. So they asked me to come up with a new take, in the, keeping Aggie's character the same and coming up with sort of a twist on this mobster character. And so I did some brainstorming and some chatting with my peeps, with Kissinger and Larry and Conan, and Jodie bailed at that point. She said, I love you guys. This has been a pleasure, but I'm really only interested in doing that version. So go with God. And I came up with this new version, sort of inspired by Robert Durst, if you know who that is. They
Yep,
did a
absolutely.
great
Yep.
documentary about him called The Jinx, which, if your listeners haven't seen, I highly recommend it. It's completely bonkers. But Robert Durst is this son of this dynastic New York real estate family, and he's sort of the black sheep who was suspected of killing his ex-wife. It was never quite pinned on him officially, and so he lived for many years. I guess you could say he got off scot-free for a long time until actually that documentary came out and had a large part in ultimately bringing him down. But anyway, I thought that character could be a compelling foil for Aggie. And so that's the version I gave to Netflix. That was in 2022. They read that new. Oh no, I pitched them that, and then they liked that version. I rewrote the original pilot with that character. They liked that. We went, of course, round and round with notes back and forth for a while, and then they came back and decided that they wanted a backup script, a second episode. And so I wrote episode 2, and that again took however many months, and then the writer's strike happened. So we were unable to communicate, talk, discuss. They weren't able to give me any feedback on it. I wasn't able to talk, we weren't able to do anything during the writer's strike. It was pencils down, no developing, no writing, no meeting. And so that was like, 6 months of, oh my God, is this going to happen or not? And already at that point, it's 2023 or 2024 actually. And, everyone in my life is like, it's time to probably move on from this. You've been working on it since 2018. Uh, like chances are, like, just be realistic about the odds of this actually happening. And luckily for me, after the writer's strike, they came back and said, we love this script. Come in and pitch us out on where the rest of the season goes, and we'll go from there. So I did that, and they loved that. And then another hurdle, they wanted to attach a sort of seasoned veteran showrunner to partner with me on it because I'd never run a show before, or certainly not one of this scale. And so we did a search for that person. It ended up being Howard Gordon, who Claire had worked with on Homeland. And kind of off we went. We had another writer's room with a whole new gang of writers. And then finally we got to shoot shoot the show. We got greenlit into production, and then began the sort of casting process that you mentioned, and all of that.
Was it filmed at all in this area? Because it looked perfect.
Yeah, we shot in Jersey for Long Island, and it really works, as you said. Even the scenes that are in New York City were shot in Jersey City, and it all works. You wouldn't really know.
No, and as somebody who like does go to Oyster Bay on a fairly frequent basis, I would not have been able to tell the difference at
Good.
all.
We got you. We
Yeah,
fixed you.
you did. You did. I think the weirdest thing to happen recently in Oyster Bay was apparently somebody was driving around with sloths and a kangaroo in his car.
Really?
Really? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so
Where did?
it's not all
Okay.
that exciting of a place, but for it was that story came out just as I finished watching The Beast in Me. So
Well, let me
I
write
felt
that
like I
down
had to
for a new
share this with
show.
you. Yeah.
Sounds like a sounds like a show all, in and of itself.
The Beast in Me,
The
season
Beast in my
2,
car.
The Beast in My Car,
Good idea.
and me getting in trouble for not being allowed to have these animals here. Um,
So weird.
yeah, but yeah, no, it really was perfect, and
Thank you.
so
I should say I certainly can't take sole credit for that. The process of making a TV show is such a team sport, and from the writing on, when Howard came in and his writing partner Daniel Pearl, they just like added so much to it and really, really helped me figure out what this series was beyond just the pilot and the outline that I had created. And then, you start hiring people, uh, set designers and costume designers and casting, and a DP and a director, and they all elevate it at every step and really make it what it ultimately is.
uh, I mean, are you surprised with the reception that it got?
I'm relieved with the reception that it got because you just don't know until it kind of hits the air, how people are going to react. And it's not a regular, it's kind of an oddball show in a lot of ways. It doesn't follow the regular sort of format of a TV series. It's two, you know, sort of oddball characters, and it's really a character piece more than it is a thriller, because and that's what it was really from the beginning. It's really about these two um, characters who are having this sort of romance. It's not a sexual romance, but it's they're kind of soulmates in a strange way, and so figuring out how to tell that story in a compelling way that's not just a writer sitting in her office writing, was a trick. And since this is a library podcast, I'll mention one other book that was a real touchstone, actually, that Claire Danes brought to the table, um, which was uh, a huge, huge, huge part of what we did in the writers' room. It's called The Journalist and the Murderer by Janet Malcolm. It's a great, great little book, a really fast and compelling read about this writer who is writing he's writing about a guy who was accused of murder, and he sort of befriends him and then of course betrays him. But it's all about the sort of uh, ethics of being a writer who is writing about a living subject. They sort of there's so many great lines in it. The one that always stuck with me is and I'll butcher it a little bit, but she says, somehow the writer never sees the betrayal coming until he sees the flash of the knife in his back, something to that effect. Um, so it was a perfect read for this TV series because, similarly to the Tony Schwartz Donald Trump uh, dynamic, this was about that very thing, the subject-writer relationship.
So before we get into the Syosset specific part of this, are you currently working on something else? Whether or not you can talk about it is fine. I'm just curious.
Yes, I have had the great fortune to sell a couple of things since The Beast came out. Um, Two different projects, which I won't say much about, other than I'm writing them both now. Two scripts, two TV scripts.
Very exciting. I
I'm
cannot
excited.
wait to see what you have coming up next. But
Thanks.
yeah, so Syosset. Let's we can kind of pivot to that.
Great.
So yeah, Jack DeMasi is the literal best person in my opinion. He is always in touch. And like if we ever have anybody on here who he has a question about or who we have a question about, he's been really good at making connections. But he was, for those of you who have not heard us talk about him, and we have had him on as well several
Oh,
times.
wow, cool. I don't even know if he remembers me, but he was really he was inspired me in a lot of ways. He was one of those teachers who just instilled a belief in myself that I could actually do this. And he's really, whether he knows it or not, a meaningful figure in my upbringing.
I think Jack is like that for a lot of people. And a lot of the times when we do these podcasts where it's people in the entertainment industry specifically, um, like Judd, there's a few other people who were in news and music, and then Kathy Kim, who is now a Muppeteer.
She is?
She is. You didn't know that?
No, that's the coolest thing ever.
Kathy Kim is Ji Young on Sesame Street.
What?
She has numerous times been in the Macy's Day Parade
That's
as
mind-blowing. I did not
yeah.
know that. That is so
It's
cool.
so cool because I remember being in elementary school with her the day that Jim Henson died, and we were both so bummed about it. And
Oh
now
my God.
she's out there, like holding up his legacy and making one of her own. So
So
proud of
cool.
her. But
So
yeah,
cool.
Jack's name comes up all the time. And, like the thing I think about him, and I think the reason why so many people, whether they ended up doing something in the industry or not, um, is the reason so many people feel this way about him is because he was so good at being just a teacher and a mentor, but he never crossed that line that a lot of times happens, like you'll get these teachers that, like it's either like they want to be like buddy buddy or they want to be, he wasn't like that. He was really, really professional while being approachable and smart and just sort of like open to ideas. So I mean, I just feel like, when people are like, well, why did so many people from Syosset, go on to do things in production? Like to me, I'm like, well, we kind of had this gift of having this teacher, aside from the fact that we also, and this was his thing, he transformed the radio station into something really big. He took a space that wasn't being used and turned it into a TV production studio. We're very lucky. Not
Yeah,
most schools have that.
100%.
But he was the one to do it. He was the one to push for it, and he really believed in it. And he saw things in people and kind of challenged them to try it.
Yeah, he did. And gosh, as a parent now, it's so impactful when a teacher sees you. You know what I mean? Because most of the time you're just a face in a room full of 20 some odd kids. But him and also another teacher at Syosset High School, Mrs. Leeds, Elizabeth Leeds, you know,
She was wonderful.
she looked at me one day and said, "You're a writer, kid." I'll never forget it. I mean, I will never forget it. It really made me feel like, holy cow, maybe I am a writer. I thought I was good at this, but now I'm getting, validated by someone who's brilliant and who knows her stuff. And so it just it's such a impactful thing. And Jack DeMacy, I just remember feeling like, gosh, she feels like an authority and a friend, and also someone who takes no BS and will tell you, tell it like it is. And I had just never been spoken to by a teacher like that before, and it inspired me.
Absolutely. So that said, do you ever get back in the area? Are there spots that you like to visit, favorite restaurants, favorite bagel place, anything you'd
Of
like to?
course,
Yeah,
so many of them are gone now. But
so many of them are gone.
I know. My mom doesn't live in Syosset anymore. She lives in Roslyn now. So when I do get back there, I do try to go back to Syosset. And of course, I will always hit up On Parade Diner with my man Chris Kremitzos. Uh, I'm mourning the loss of Woodbury Pizza.
Yeah, it's not the same. I mean, no offense to, I know the place that took it over has other locations around,
Yeah,
but it's not the same. Woodbury
yeah,
Pizza was so good, and it had like a really good special that you could get like a buy one, a
yeah.
BOGO, right?
Yeah, that was our spot. And we loved Frank's Pizza. That's not there anymore. And Dugan's is not there anymore.
Dugan's moved, but again,
Oh, they did?
well, they did, but it was that build, they moved to like a
Yeah,
strip mall, but it's not in Syosset and it's not in that old building
right.
where,
Part of the charm, part of the
exactly.
magic. So yeah, I mean, I think On Parade might be the only vestige of like my original spots that I used to go. Woodbury Country Deli maybe is still there, I think.
It is, yes. That is
Uh,
still there, still in the same location.
Bagels, we were Bagel Boss people.
It's either Bagel Boss or Bagel Master, I feel
Oh,
like.
Bagel Master. Yeah. Well, when we were in high school, Bagel Master was definitely the spot because that was closer.
Bagel Boss stays open 24/7 though. That's
Does it? Wow,
it
I didn't
does.
know
I
that.
don't think it did it, though. I will say I don't know if it did in high school. I think like maybe when I was in college I realized that. But
Wow.
yeah. Bagel Master does not, but the bagels are really solid. So
They're still there. Oh,
yeah.
good.
Yeah, Bagel
That's
Master
awesome.
and Bagel Boss are both still there. So
Cool. Gotta hit those
um
up.
yeah, so another question, and we kind of talked about this a little bit before. Do you remember your senior quote?
Not really. I have a vague recollection that it was a Tribe Called Quest quote, maybe.
Yeah, so you have actually, do you mind if I read it?
Oh God, yeah, go for it.
Let me see. I'm actually you do a shout out to a bunch of people. I'm gonna not go there, but you kind of
Okay.
have two quotes. let's see. It says there is a tribe called quote. Uh, it's kind of simple. Just remain your own, or you'll be crazy,
Crazy,
sad, and
sad, and
alone.
alone. All
Yes.
right.
I mean, like to me, like if people like, do you remember your senior quote? I'd be like, it was something from the Beatles because that was like during my hardcore Beatles phase.
Uh-huh.
But you also wrote, and this I really, really loved, was if you have a choice whether to go to regular heaven or pie heaven, choose pie
Yeah.
heaven because it might be a trick, but if it's not,
I know what that is. That is from Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy.
Oh
If you
my
remember
God.
that.
How did
Yeah.
I have the Deep Thoughts book, and that was
Oh
not
yeah, I
one
used to
that
have
came to
that.
my mind right
Yeah.
away.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Really, this was super fun, and it's
Thank you.
always great to catch up with people who, again, who've come from here and who are just sort of out there doing these really, ambitious things and really making it work. Now that I guess you're kind of you were talking about being a parent. I'm a parent, my kids are 10.
Hmm.
It's I mean, how do you kind of see when you look at them and your kids and you're just like thinking about like the future and what you would kind of impart to them, to sort of give them encouragement to move through things.
So that's a big question, Jessica.
It's bigger than I thought it was when I was thinking about it.
You know, listen, it's sort of a trite uh, thing that's been repeated oft, but find something that you love to do, so it doesn't feel like work. That's so few people get to actually live that, and uh, gosh, if you can do it, that's the move. But I also really want my kids to travel and see the world. That's a really big one for me because I didn't really do it when I was younger, when I, you know, had the chance before I was a working man. I think that's just so formative for anyone, and it's something that if you have the means, I think everybody should try it.
Thank you so much. I cannot wait to see what you have going next.
Thank you so much. That's really nice. I really appreciate it. And thank you for having me. This was fun.
Thank you for joining us. So once again, this was Jessica with Syosset Libraries Turn the Page podcast with one of our Syosset alum. That would be you.
Yeah, that's me. Thanks.
And we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.